Hey guys, this is Merlini and MerliniDota, and I'm here to bring you another episode of Merlini's Mailbag, and this one is episode number 22. The title of this one is Abaddon, Elder Titan, Medusa, and Centaur Impressions. So the question that I got this week in my email, today is October 8th, 2013. Hello Merlini, the subject is Elder Titan in competitive play. I noticed this hero has seen some daylight in the competitive scene of Dota 2 recently. I personally think he is very underrated since his passive and turtling is almost unmatched. Also his Echo Stomp, even if not hit, disables or at least forces enemy heroes out of certain area, which could be useful in and against some team compositions. On top of that, he is decent against some mid heroes and could also go to offlane. Was he played in the past and in what kind of lineups? Could you see him having serious potential and why? Best regards, Tatu. And shoutouts to Nero, who posed a very similar question to Medusa, and Juan, who posed also another similar question on Abaddon. So thanks, guys, to all of you three. I'm going to lump them together into one episode and just talk about all these heroes post TI3. So it's been almost exactly 2 months since TI3, and every hero has been enabled in -CM, also known as Captain's Mode, except for Huskar. Huskar, on a side note, I think is extremely imbalanced, and his passive should be reworked before he gets implemented in Captain's Mode. 98% magic resistance is just too darn much. Newer heroes to Captain's Mode include Abaddon, Elder Titan, Medusa, and Centaur Windrunner. I meant Warrunner there, not Centaur Windrunner. That would be funny to look at. And that will be the focus of today's slideshow. Statistics are available for these 4 heroes, but sample size is very limited for some of them. I actually initially tried to check DotaAcademy.com for statistics, but they only had 1 game on Elder Titan and no games on Abaddon, so I knew that those heroes weren't updated. So I actually pulled data from datdota.com, DATDOTA.com. So first hero I want to talk about is Abaddon, the Lord of Avernus. His role, support, mostly carry occasionally. I've seen Loda of Team Alliance play him as a carry role, but that is few and far between. His win rate is meager 51.7%. Games picked 180. As a baseline, use Visage, which is the most popular hero, as like 1066. A lot of the other popular heroes are like 900-ish range. So this was taken of all of 6.78. I don't exactly know when he was added to CM, so it seems like he's been picked and banned a lot, so it's probably, it should be a little bit higher than this. His win rate, astoundingly, is much lower than I expected, especially considering how often he is picked and banned, and how high he is picked and banned. I see him like first or second ban like quite frequently. Pros about this hero: he's very difficult to kill because of his borrow time ultimate. He keeps his allies alive and unstun locked. They're actually able to pop their defensive cooldowns, whether it be BKB or Chemical Rage, to survive because his shield takes off stuns. And he is great without items. And because he's great without items and none of his skills really scale well with the items, his borrow times at a set HP mark, 400 HP, his passive skill, if you hit somebody, everyone that attacks him gets the aura, so like why does it need to be you that gets like all the damage items, because he doesn't actually scale that well with damage items, and his first 2 skills are just flat heal or set amount of shield. So he's great without items. He needs like a little bit of mana, but I think his primary role should be a support. His cons: low range on shield, 500 range only. And you really want to cast it reactively a lot. Sometimes you need to cast pre-shield, but if your mana limitations dictate that you need to just use it reactively, then you have to be very, very close. And as a support hero, you're very, very squishy most of the time. Abaddon less so than most, but that doesn't mean that you want to get caught in an RP. That doesn't mean that you should line up for a shackle shot. And the lower range your spells are, the more danger you are in and your team, because you have to be like closer to the fight, and the more they catch into that like vacuum whatever combo, it's, or even Song of the Siren just running up and then into a THD ice path, it just gets more and more difficult. If his range on his shield wasn't so low, I think he would be an incredible hero, but as it stands, I just think he's mediocre. His passive skill requires him to be like in the middle, but you don't actually want to be in the middle because you don't really do anything besides shield people. and you're not like right clicking people a lot of the time, just because you have like no items if you're a support. And his borrow time is good at not getting him killed, but great positioning can sometimes counteract that. And his first skill is pretty good. I like Death Coil. Good, can be used offensively, can be used defensively, but his shield is really where it's at. Again, low range on shield though puts him like on a B tier list. Definitely not on par with Bat Rider and the likes in my mind. And he's very difficult to farm with, so I don't really see why you would pick him as a carry, because his shield is not great for farming, Death Coil awful for farming, Borrow Time not good either, and Curse of Avernus is just like okay. Compare that to something like Goblin's Greed, or Grievel's Greed rather, it's just night and day difference. So the next hero, the original question, was about Elder Titan, and this one I think is much more promising than Abaddon. His role: solo mid, solo offlane more than the Chinese scene, carry, and support. You can pretty much put him anywhere besides the jungle, and even then you can just stack. So his win rate is a whopping 58.9%. 58.9. That is incredibly high. That's higher than EO as of 6.78 competitive matches. And games picked 107, and he's kind of a late bloomer in terms of the post TI3 period. He's been picked a lot these past 2 weeks, like the last week of September and first week of October, but before that, he wasn't really on the radar. He's kind of like the opposite of Abaddon. Abaddon was picked a lot in August, and as soon as he got implemented, but after that, he's like dropped off a little bit because people realize, oh, we're not winning with this hero because the hero is not that good. Pros: you can lane him anywhere: mid, offlane, carry, support. He's useful with and without items. You need like a little bit of mana if you want to go Spirit Stomp, but in general, you don't really need any items, because all you need to do is just walk up your Spirit, make sure their enemies are afflicted by natural order, because that is his most imbalanced spell. Takes off 100% of your base armor and armor gained through agility, and it also takes off some magic resistance. It's incredible. Natural order is an aura. That is a huge pro, because that means it goes through BKB. Countless times I've seen heroes trying to man up during BKB. They just like BKB, walk in thinking they're invulnerable, and then they just die in 3 hits. They're like, what just happened there? But all your armor is removed. Natural order just scales incredibly well throughout the game. It removes more and more armor as heroes gain more and more levels and more agility. And compare that to a spell like Shadow Fiend's Aura. -6 Aura, sure, larger range, but you actually have to be there. Elder Titan, you don't even have to be there. You just spend your spirit in and you have natural order. And it scales way better. You can remove tons more armor than 6, and it removes magic resistance too. What a ridiculous spell. Definitely one of the most imbalanced abilities in the game right now. His spirit grants vision for team fights, which is huge. Take someone, for example, like Shadow Demon, who you remove vision from his Shadow Poison, and he's not in competitive anymore. So vision is very underrated. You can scout people out. You can even get tons of damage on them just with the simple natural order and spirit build, and you're not exposing yourself to any danger either. You can just sit like 1200 range away, cast it, walk it away while you walk your hero away, and you're perfectly safe, and you gain a lot of information about the other team and can set up for great team fights. You have amazing spell ranges. Talked about how Spirit is pretty long range, and you can stomp to initiate or escape even, and you can cast his ultimate from like almost 2 screens length away, which is pretty insane. So his cons, I couldn't actually really think of any cons. I mean, he's somewhat mana intensive with Spirit and Stomp build, but most people go Spirit and Natural Order build, and only his Aura passes through BKB, but that's enough. Aura is his most imbalanced spell, and I couldn't really find any cons about the hero. You can do a lot of damage with the items. You can go like a Moose Speed build with phase drums and just catch people with your spirit and just catch people with your right clicks, so you can chase them down with the bonus Moose Speed granted from Ancestral Spirit. You can go Arcane Mech because you don't actually need anything else. You can just walk in with, you have enough mana to just constantly spam your natural order over and over, and the longer you stay alive, the better it is. And you can use them as a carry sometimes just because that minus armor is just, again, just absolutely insane. So Medusa, kind of a weaker hero, especially compared to Elder Titan. Role: solo mid and carry, but I've only seen her picked in 12 games. Actually, according to DotA, it's only been picked for 12 games. 50% win rate, not very much to speak about for this hero. Pros: scales incredibly well with items. So split shot, 5 arrows, 80% damage, 400% damage theoretically with split shot, which is incredible damage per gold. And Combine that with her ultimate, which also increases physical damage output by 40%, and you're just talking about like off the charts damage, especially if you get a Divine Rapier on Medusa, one of the best wielders in the game, probably next to Gyrocopter. She's probably better than Gyrocopter with Rapier. The only problem is, how are you going to farm it with her? Rework Stone Gaze is extremely effective. It works. It stuns them for a few seconds. They take physical damage amplification. They're magic immune, but not a big deal. And it goes to BKB, which is very useful to know. And it also destroys illusions, manta, or otherwise. Cons: very slow farmer. You need to like stack camps in order to farm fast, but that means you need a Helmet Dominator. But if you have a Helmet Dominator, you don't have any survivability because she needs mana. If you go Mystic Snake to farm, you don't have the stats later that you need. And speaking of Mystic Snake, that spell is just garbage. It's like Homing Missile v 2.0 in terms of terrible damage skills on carries. The thing travels insanely slow and is very, very unreliable, and it's also not that useful past the laning phase. It's like okay at anti-push, but you can just get like 8 stats instead of 4 points of Mystic Snake and just right-click the creeps down while still being very, very tanky. She has very little team contribution early game, and if she gets shut down, she is just useless. I mean, you can use Stone Gaze, but you'll just hit like a wet noodle when you try to right click them while they're in stone form. Ryuborez as a solo mid actually got a blink on her and just like cast Stone Gaze and blink behind the enemy, and then the rest of her lineup consisted of Sven +3, and Sven had like BKB, Mask of Madness, and damage items, and he would just man up on them and just right click. If they face the Sven, they just die. There's no real good way of surviving that. But if they run into Medusa, they get slowed. They get their turn rate is slowed too, and they get stunned and they die anyway. So it's like kind of a cool strategy, but it's pretty difficult to execute. And Centaur Warrunner is the last hero that I wanted to talk about. Role solo mid or carry. Again, not too many games picked, so it's kind of weird as to what role Centaur Warrunner is in. He's decent. He's a very good jungler too. I actually forgot to put that as the role, but he's also a fantastic jungler with return. But the problem with return is it's not that great for ganking. Compare that to a skill like Eidolon from Enigma. It's very good at ganking and it's very good at jungling. Win rate 38.1%. That is abysmally low. It is just awful win rate. Pros: great initiation and escape. Ultimate is global. So Stampede is global, and it can actually save your teammates as in the late game, which is I think one of the most useful parts of the ability. Like if you get Blink Hex, which is often how carries die in the late game, or Abyssal Blade, you can just ult them away and they can just escape. It's incredible waste of opponent's time, and not to mention the most obvious use, which is just running and charging and slowing everybody 100% move speed to minimum, and then doing damage based on strength and just initiating like that. Huge AoE burst damage potential. His Swift Stomp, his Double Edge, his Ultimate are all AoE, and if you can manage a good initiate on 2 or 3, whether you need the help of Vacuum or RP, it's insane how much damage it does. He has huge strength gain of 3.8. So remember when PL was super imbalanced and people were like, oh, 4.2 agility gain. His strength gain is 3.8, but no one ever talks about that. It's extremely high. So he's naturally tanky. You don't need to get that many tanky items, although you can. Cons: although his ultimate is like decent initiation, it's not good enough to not get a blink or a force. So he has to get a blink or a force, and if you do that, you don't have like your hood that you sometimes need. You don't have blade mail. You don't have armlet for more HP or strength. And he really does need that blink or force staff to be of maximum effectiveness. And if you just stampede and run into all of them, they'll just disperse, delta split, whatever you want to call it, and you'll get like 1, maybe 2 heroes if you're lucky with it, with your stomp double edge combo. But if you have a blink, you can almost reliably get 2 or 3, or just pick 1 hero off instantly, instead of having to like charge up all the way around them and then let their teammates react to you. So, and also you can save Stampede until later in the fight if you so need to. And his high strength gain of 3.8 also leaves him very vulnerable to percent-based spells, which makes his Lifestealer's Feast, which is 4, 5, 6, 7% of your HP, and Timbersaw's Whirling Death, which is 15% of your current stat. and reducing his strength by that much just does way too much damage. Timbersaw is hugely effective, way more effective against strength heroes than agility and intel because of that whirling death capability. And some heroes like Alchemist, let's say, have like kind of fallen off because of Timber's rise in popularity. So going back to the original question of oh yeah, Echo Stomp. Even if it doesn't hit, it disables or at least forces enemy heroes out of certain areas, which is extremely useful. It's a good zoning tool. Even if you don't get hit by it and aren't affected by the aura, you're still forced to like move away, and that's time you could be spent casting spells. Could be spent doing damage, and if you get hit by the stomp, you're just gonna get Earth Splittered and just absolutely destroyed. Um, and he is also very good in minus armor lineups. I mean, his minus armor is already good by himself, but if you stack that with Shadow Fiend Aura or Venge, Wave of Terror, or Alchemist, or even just a Medallion from Visage, the physical damage output is insane, way higher than just a low Medusas, let's say. And what's he played in the past? I think I was casting with Gods, and he was talking about how popular Tauren Chieftain was in the Dota 1 scene, especially in some regions, but I actually don't know too much about it personally, so I can't give too much information on it. But I have talked about his serious potential, and as far as these four heroes goes, Abaddon, I expect him to be picked a little bit less. His win rate is not that great. I think people have figured out that he's actually just not that great of a hero. He's good in certain lineups, and he's good in a very passive, defensive triple lane, I think. But if you just want to make a man Superman, you can just get Tree. Like, Tree Weaver is still pretty good. Teams just kind of don't use it that much anymore. They serve different roles, Tree and Abaddon, but also they serve like similar roles in terms of the laning phase. Elder Titan, I expect him to go up in popularity. I mean, he's already like pretty popular right now, but win rate of 58.9%, you can't really say that he's a bad hero or that he lacks a lot. What a ridiculous hero. And now that people have started figuring out that, oh, all you need to do is just natural order and just be in their face and your team will wreck them. People have figured that out, and it's just so simple to execute, which is why he has such a high win rate. You don't really need that much finesse. You don't need to hit these like amazing Echo Stomp Earth Splitter combos. All you need to do, walk in your invulnerable magic spirit and just walk in the middle of them, and then just let your team do whatever they would normally do. That's it. It's very simple to execute. It's not like Abaddon, where it requires like pretty difficult position close enough to your carry, but not far enough to get disabled or silenced or orchided or whatever it may be. It's just very easy to pull off. So I expect him to rise in popularity. Win rate may be a little bit lower, just because I expect people to learn how to deal with him, similar to how people have learned how to deal with Wiz. People have learned how to deal with Batrider. I don't know exactly how you deal with Elder Titan and his aura, but eventually people will figure out how to cope with it, even if it's just first banning him every time. So I expect him to be picked more and banned more, and win rate probably a little bit less. Medusa, 50% win rate, 12 games picked. I think she's much more difficult to execute. You have to like have very good play early game so that Medusa just doesn't get wrecked and useless. But she's also not that good in the triple lane, so I don't know. And like team fights, okay, you have to like have like decent coordination. They have to like go on the Medusa and be facing the Medusa. You have to have physical damage output to take advantage of these stone gaze. So it's like much more difficult to pull off than Elder Titan. I expect their games picked to still stay relatively low. Win rate just about the same. I don't really see much going with Medusa one way or another. Centaur Warrunner. I expect his win rate to go up, which is very easy to say because it's pretty much the only way it can go from 38.1% games picked. I don't see it being very much at all, especially with Nyx and Timber unlikely to be nerfed anytime soon, at least just... I mean, Nyx is like, you can manage with a Nyx, you can manage against a Timbersaw, but unfortunately Centaur can't. But teams can, Centaur Warrunner can't. So because of that, and because of these like two simple picks that are generally good versus most lineups already, like Centaur Warrunner just requires like very specific bans, and he just isn't that great. I think he's good in like limited hero pools like RD or Captain's Draft, but in terms of Captain's mode, just not that great of a hero. So Centaur, Medusa, most useless of the four. Abaddon, like, kind of useful and sometimes, but still just sitting at 50% win rate. Nothing like special about him. And Elder Titan is the new Batrider, is the new awesome hero that everybody wants a piece of. So expect to see more play of this dude. Hopefully a natural order. I think that's his. That spell is just way too strong. Or Spirit Vision, hopefully getting nerfed too. I don't know. I think that it still needs like a little bit of time to pan out, but just initial impressions, 100 games is pretty high. I think that the zero needs to be dealt with somehow. So again, thanks for tuning in, everybody. This is a weekly episode that I air every Tuesday night at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. Please email me at mailbag@MerliniDota.com if you have any questions that you would like me to answer in a 10 to 15 minute episode. And if you like my videos, then please subscribe to me at youtube.com/MerliniDota. You can also follow me on Twitter and Facebook, all/MerliniDota for updates. And you can also tune into my stream at twitch.tv/MerliniDota. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you next week.